So I was reading this article the other day, and it was talking about designing your own baby. It's called gene editing. Have you guys heard of it?
Yeah, I've heard of it. The technology behind it is called CRISPR. There's still a lot they're figuring out detail-wise, but the basics of it are pretty simple. There's a segment of DNA that they take out, and they replace it with a strand of RNA that they've made outside the body in preparation for placement.
So DNA is double helix and RNA is single helix, right? So RNA is the readable version of DNA.
Yeah. So is CRISPR only in human beings then?
Technically, it's in all living organisms, so it can be used in plants, bacteria, and yeast because all living organisms run on DNA. It's kind of insane. They've been able to create mosquitoes that are immune to malaria and pigs that are able to grow livers and other organs that transplant successfully into humans.
Wow, so it could actually be a really big thing for human beings and mankind.
But wait, what do they do exactly in humans? It sounds like it gives people the ability to just shop through options of what they want their child to be like. Is it just physical characteristics or personality characteristics too? How does it all work?
Well, they haven't tried to impregnate anyone with edited genomes yet, but there are still two different types of gene editing, germline and somatic.
Somatic cells make up the majority of the human body. It makes up the blood, brain, and skin cells. Which type would be more beneficial for us? It seems like they're both beneficial, but germline might be even more so. We could help along human evolution with that, it sounds like.
I've been researching it a bit too. It seems that somatic mutation analysis could be more ethical. This type of therapy treatment is used to benefit human health overall and can even be used as a cancer treatment. According to an article published by the National Institutes of Health, researchers have found that because cancer is caused by genetic mutations, they can use CRISPR to cut the DNA and take the mutated genes out, edit them and basically delete the cancer genes, and then replace them back into patients free of cancer. Whereas germline mutation therapy is also beneficial but has some drawbacks, because this treatment is used for non-medical reasons to basically rewrite human DNA. Overall, we are making some dramatic changes within the medical field.
So somatic editing could be used to attack cancer cells or end diseases like muscular dystrophy, sickle cell anemia, and heart disease. It could honestly help society greatly. Germline editing can be used to make humans, in a sense, perfect and end disease entirely in the human population.
So does that mean that we would have more like smart, pretty, athletic people walking around that could also live longer?
Well, yeah, this could potentially happen. Parents could simply edit traits such as eye color, height, if you have freckles or not, but it's harder to modify things like athletic ability or intelligence because these are complex traits, which makes them hard to pinpoint because the complex traits involve more than one gene. Additionally, if someone is athletically superior to another, chances are their genes help them in their nature, but it's about nurture too.
Couldn't all this be a bad thing though? What about the legal side of it?
Yeah, the scientists will basically be playing God in a sense, not to mention how expensive it would be. There's a lot of concern that only wealthy individuals could afford these types of therapy, giving them an even bigger upper hand, as if privilege and oppression aren't a societal problem already. As for the legal aspect of it, creating a genetically modified baby is illegal in 25 countries.
It says here in the article in The Guardian that it is illegal in many countries, but surprisingly not in the United States. That doesn't really make sense to me. It actually says China and the US are the two countries putting the most funds into research for this. It became legal to modify babies in the UK as of July. It's pretty strange to think what our future might hold.
It says here that it used to cost around $100 million to gene edit, but now it's down to $1,000, which does make it a lot more attainable for more people, but it's still really expensive. I feel like the rich would only really be the ones that can afford this still. And I mean, if you have the money, then why wouldn't you pay it? I mean, people already spend a lot on their kids. You only want the best for them anyway, so why not?
If you ask me, society is already competitive enough. If people are paying to make their children better in a way, then there's going to be even a larger gap in society.
Okay, it kind of reminds me of what Hitler tried to do, except now science would be helping it. No wonder 25 countries have already made it illegal. They just don't want to even go there, I bet. People will just be creating a superhuman race made of people with only certain characteristics. People are not meant to be perfect. That's what makes being human so great. It gives us all the ability to be unique.
My cousin has Down syndrome. Is that something that they'd be trying to eradicate? I mean, what about people who are deaf or have dwarfism? Where do people draw the line between what is a disease and what isn't a disease? Because I bet that people in those communities would not think that they were suffering from a disease.
It's true. Imagine being an individual who was born deaf and you learn people are trying to eradicate it. That would just make people believe that there is something inherently wrong with them, and there isn't. They're human beings too.
I agree. They're still human beings. And Emily, in terms of your cousin in Iceland, this is something that they've already been doing, but without gene editing. They've significantly decreased the babies born with Down syndrome after using a chromosome combination to check for abnormalities.
So they put the power in the mother's hands to go through the pregnancy if they find out that their baby has Down syndrome or not. That's kind of sad, especially because they have had decreased rates of Down syndrome in their country. But I mean, at least it's in the power of the mothers. It's just interesting to think about.
Guys, all of these issues are just part of such a big picture, we don't really realize all that's involved yet. It's just super beneficial on one hand, but on the other, who knows what issues could come up if this were implemented.
In my opinion, I think gene editing can be beneficial, but there's not a fine line or set rules just yet where we can draw to where it can go from being ethical to unethical. I think somatic gene editing is something to think about more so than germline gene editing. I wouldn't mind being able to live in a world where diseases or sicknesses such as cancers can be cured, but I also believe there needs to be more research and set rules around gene editing before implementing it altogether.
I think gene editing is scary. It gives people who will have another leg up on those who don't. Anyone who doesn't have access to it would feel inferior, and society already has a lot of problems, I think, and when people start using these for selfish purposes like physical appearance, it'll get worse. However, the health aspect of it has its benefits. If we could get rid of diseases and sicknesses from the start, it would be great, but all that comes to mind is affordability and whenever that happens. But I think I think it'll happen no matter what, and I guess we'll see how it plays out in 10 years.
So personally, I think that gene editing is awesome if it's used for cancer treatments or other treatments for diseases. I think it gets a little dangerous and excessive when it's used for changing things like your eye color or if you have freckles or not, just for aesthetic things. And then I just think humans are humans and we should be how we are. I don't think we should tinker too much with everything. It's part of why we're so great and unique. But I mean, regardless of my opinion, I think that all of this needs to be researched way more.
I feel that gene editing has benefits as well as negatives, just like anything. I believe that somatic mutations should be allowed, but only if accessible to all people. Germline mutations are taking science too far in my eyes. Society is already so divided, and if the wealthy were the only people to have access to it due to its cost, our world would grow further apart. Another issue I have with gene editing in general is who has the right to say that dwarfism or Down syndrome needs to be eradicated. I don't think that should be determined by science and mankind.
I personally believe this topic is highly controversial and further research definitely needs to be completed. I do, however, think our individuality lies within our imperfections and allows us to be unique. I think the distinction in which I would draw the line and say it is unethical is when scientists allow this genetic engineering for aesthetic purposes and no longer solve the medical complications humanity faces. Privilege is already structured by society, and with genetic engineering, it just seems as though discrimination and oppression would only increase. With all the new discoveries in science, though, I am interested to see what our future holds.